And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at Dominant Species Marine. So, Dominant Species is a very popular game from Chad Jensen that came out years ago, a heavy worker placement game in which you are trying to control the planet Earth with whatever species you have, from the lizards to the amphibians to primates, whatever it might be. I really liked the game a lot. I really enjoyed it. I haven't played it that much since then because it's a big, gigantic game, which takes, well, I shouldn't say it's gigantic, but it takes a while to play. It could take 4 hours, depending on how many people are in the game. I was excited to hear this one coming out because I heard it streamlined it to some degree, but it also is marine, and for some reason I like games in the water even more than the ones on the land. I don't know why that is. It's just something that I personally prefer. I regret to tell you that I'm not going to be comparing the two here in this video. I might do it in another video, but I'm sure other people have done it online. You may never have played Dominant Species. Don't worry about it. Let's just talk about this game on its own. Is it worth getting? For up to 4 players, let's see how it works. Please don't use this rules overview as a way to learn to play the game. There's a lot of rules. I'm just going to give you some basic ideas. You're going to be playing one of 4 types: the cephalopods, fishes, crustaceans, or reptiles. They're on the board here. Each type, you keep a track over here. The food chain will break ties, so reptiles always win, but turn order starts at the crustaceans and goes upwards. Players are going to be using their creatures to try to control stuff here on Earth, and so you'll be putting out cubes that match your color. These are the reptiles as the game goes by. If they're ever removed from the board for any reason, they go out of the game. So you need to be careful. You only have 35 cubes, but you're trying to control different regions on Earth. Each player is going to have a certain number of cylinders that they're going to be used to take actions, and that depends on the number of players in the game. Here's where you keep all your different creatures in the gene pool. At the beginning of the game, everyone's going to draw some trait cards. You're going to keep one. So, for example, I'm playing with the cannibal reptiles. Whenever one of my species is eliminated, I get a victory point. Hooray! And then at the top, you can see what reptiles like. In this case, they like sun. There are various, well, they really like sun. There are various different things. We have sun, worms, plankton, gastropods, sponges, and algae. So you can see they like 2 and 1, and more can be added as the game goes by. This is going to matter at certain points because if I have reptiles, for example, here in the kelp forest and on land and in the coral reef, and you're going to start with several in the coral reef. That's where most players are going to start in this game. These are thriving. Why? Because they're all touching the sun there. But if I have a reptile in the seagrass meadow, I need this coral or sun. Neither one of those is touching the sungrass meadow, so that one is endangered. It's possible that that one could go extinct. On a player's turn, they're going to take a cylinder and place it on one of these many actions on this board here. So you can see it starts from abundance and goes all the way down. When you place it, you can put it anywhere except once you put one down, from then on out, each other one that you place must be lower or to the left. So if I put one here in speciation, I could now go here to my next one, and then maybe later on I could go down here to migration. As the game goes by and you get dominance in species, you're going to get these special white cylinders. These can go anywhere you want. You don't have to follow those rules, and there are many action spaces in the board that give you special abilities that only a white cylinder can be placed into. Besides putting out a cylinder and getting the action, you can also on your turn remove all the cylinders from the board, but that's your action. Let's talk briefly about the different actions. There's going to be tokens that are randomly pulled from a bag and put out here, and after everybody has passed once, we have a reseed event which would replace these. But if I go here to abundance, this one simply lets me pick one of the 4 available tokens that's there and place it somewhere on the board. So I might say I would like it to be there, and that gives that element to all 3 of the areas that touch it. When reseeding, anything that's left here is going to move down, and if you go to this spot, you're able to remove elements off the board, or down here the same thing can happen in depletion. Adaptation lets you take these tokens and place them on your player board. So I might go to adaptation, and the cephalopods, this is what the resources they want, but I have an empty spot, and now the cephalopods like the sun. So that's a way for you to be able to use and adapt to more elements. Regression, you'll put one of your cubes if you go here, and as the game goes by, it's possible to lose things, and this basically just stops you from losing them. Speciation allows you to add more things to the board. If I put a token here, I can find a spot here that is touching this element, and I get to add cubes to it depending on what spot it is. So if it's ocean, I add 4. If it's where a vent tile is, I'm only adding 1. So I can pick the tile as long as it has this element attached to it. Wanderlust down here is the main way to get tiles on the board. So you'll see all the way at the bottom, there's going to be some tiles that you're going to place on the board, and you're going to take one of these tiles and put it on the board somewhere. Usually you probably want to put it next to another tile, because the number of tiles you put next to each other, if they're the same, will give you a bonus. Like this will give me a bonus of 3 points. But if I get 6 of the same tile, I could get 21 points. After you do it, you'll take one of the tokens here at Wanderlust and kind of give that new tile that you put out has an element that's needed for it. Tectonics, which is right below Wanderlust, does the same thing, except it lets you put these vents out. Now these vents have to go around the edge of the map, and they're going to change kind of the way that those tiles are. Usually they're not very good for the creatures that are on them. Migration, when you go to these spots, it lets you move cubes from one spot to another. Competition lets you kill enemy units that are in the same territory as yours, as long as it matches one of these tokens here. And evolution is one of the main 2 things of this game. The last 2 things here, evolution and domination, they are the main ways that players are going to get points. When you do evolution, you're going to pick a tile on the board, and that matches the type that's shown, and then you're going to score points. This is 5 for whoever has the most. So here you can see that the crustaceans have 3 cubes, so they're going to get 5 points. Then second most gets 3 and third most gets 2. Since orange and blue, the fishes and the crustaceans, are tied, the food chain breaks the ties, so the crustaceans beat the fish, and then you will score those points. Then depending on which spot you went to in evolution, you are going to play a card. There are 5 cards next to the board here, and depending on which space, you might be able to pick from 1 to 5, or you might be forced to pick 1. When you take the card, you're just going to play the card and do whatever it says. So this one here, for example, says swap an element on your animal with an element of a different type on Earth. That's pretty cool. And then once that's done, the cards are going to slide down and a new card's going to come into play. Now, many cards, when they come into play, sometimes they have a special rule that says when this one enters play, you score each ocean tile and each smoker vent tile. Some, like the card I just showed you, while this card's in play, special pawns may bump opposing special pawns. A special pawn can bump off a normal pawn, that's these white cylinders here, and here, if this is in play, they can bump off each other also. So sometimes there's not a lot on them, but it might be a good special ability. Move an element on Earth to another location. It's up to you which one of these you pick. When the new cards come into play, you're also going to look to see if there's a skeleton there, which causes an extinction event, or a full fish there, which causes a survival event. Extinction's pretty easy. Each creature that's on the board, if it's not an area that's touching something, if it's endangered, it's removed. It's gone extinct. So all those are removed from the game. During a survival event, whoever has this card, and that's the person who is on the most vents, so in this case it would be brown, scores 1 point for each vent that you're on. So both of these events are pretty simple, but they allow players to get points, and also it's always that danger of extinction. You might try to put some species in an area that you don't have the resources to go into, but you want to quick score those points before your species is eliminated. I already mentioned reseed a bit, but every time you pull all your tokens off the board, you move this cube over. When all 4 cubes are moved over, we move them back, and a reseed event happens, which is going to replace all the tiles that are pulled off of the board and, kind of set new things up, put more terrain markers out, etc., and then keep going. The game is going to end when the asteroid card is played. So this is in the bottom of the deck. In the bottom cards of the deck, there's an asteroid card. When this comes, you're eliminating all but one species on one tile and one species on every adjacent tile. Then the game ends at the next reseed event. You can see that both extinction and survival happen. And then as soon as reseed happens, you end. Now, at that point, you're going to get points for all the different things you've done, including domination. I said domination action was important, and so we're going to talk about that now. When you do a domination action, you're going to look at your sheet here. So let's say I'm trying to dominate with the sun action, the sun resource, and I have 2 on my sheet. I then look for every hex that has that and has one of my people. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 here on the board. I multiply 5 times 2. I now have domination of that element. That does 2 things. First, I have to compare it to where the domination marker is. Right now you can see it's on 1. So it's going to move up to 10 now. So if someone else wants to dominate it, they would have to go higher than 10. At the end of the game, each thing that I dominate is going to give me points equal to wherever it is, which is quite a few points. But also when you dominate an element, you get this matching white token for that element even if another player has it. And as I said earlier, they can replace pawns, go anywhere they want, or they can do all kinds. Their actions that they can take are really cool. Like Wanderlust, you know, when you go here, you get to do another action after going there. When you do speciation, you have to pick the tile that has an element here. But if I use the white tile, I can do anything I want. So that's great to dominate something. And those points are going to be added to the points that you've gotten at the end of the game for each element that you dominate. There's more rules in the game, but that's a basic idea of how it works. Let's keep going. This is a GMT game. Their games traditionally don't look amazing, although this is, I would say, 5 times better than the original Dominant Species looks. The background on the tiles looks fantastic. I mean, my main complaint here is going to be those cubes. They're pretty boring looking. They don't look like crabs and lizards and stuff, and why not? They all look the same. And I also thought that the worker placement area here is a little crowded when you're placing these discs down. You're placing them on spots that are not circles, and it's messy to put everything out here. I was kind of surprised that the shapes on the board don't match the things you're putting on them. The art on the cards, and the cards are okay quality, is good. I like looking at these. I think that going over all the stuff on them, these were not difficult cards to figure out. And you do have this massive player aid, which tells you how all the different things work. And some of it's a little more complicated. I think autotrophs, depletion, they're a little complex, but you don't need to deal with them right away. They don't come into play until a little bit later. The most important things to understand are evolution and domination, because those have a big effect on the game itself. The rule book is your typical GMT rule book. There are a lot of pages in it. It explains a bunch of basic concepts first before going through the game. I had to go back and look at a few things a couple times, or some stuff I didn't think was clearly explained. I had some confusion for a while about how vent tiles are placed. But for the most part, I was able to get through it. It's not a complex, well, it is a complex game, but it's not overly complex once you understand how it works. Now, this is a game that you're going to be very invested in. There's a lot going on in this game, and the choices you have at some points could feel overwhelming. At the beginning of the game, what do? Do you adapt your creature, giving it more power? Do you immediately dominate something? That's what I think, to get those white tokens. Or do you try to quick spread out and do some scoring at the beginning? Man, the game has a lot of strategy in it. That being said, there is strategy. This is the heaviest game I know of, other than the original Dominant Species, the heaviest game I know of with a lot of rules that also involves take that. I mean, there is take that everywhere, from attacking other people to taking a token away from them so that their creatures starve, to playing one of those incredibly powerful cards that will mess people up, including the asteroid at the end of the game, which just pulverizes a hex on the board. This game is mean as all get out. Area control games by very nature are mean, where we're trying to control. Here you're just trying to control all over the planet Earth. But this one feels even meaner than that. I don't mind that. But sometimes the mean attacks that you can do in a game will kind of reverberate more in a longer game. Now, the box, I don't know what the box for this says on time length. Let's take a look here at the bottom of it. It says 1 to 3 hours. I feel like that's pretty legitimate. I think if you play with a group of 4 people and none of them have too much analysis paralysis, you might be able to knock it off in 2.5, maybe 2 hours if you're really fast. But it takes a while, and depending on the order that cards come out, the game could drag a bit. And one of the games of this I played, the reset action, it took forever for it to happen because special cards came up and things where people were able to get their workers back and play them out again, and it just took a while for that reseed. And when the reseed action didn't happen, there were tokens that were not on the board, so it kind of slowed the game down a bit. Things like that can happen. And also things can happen where you just sit there and go, I have so much to do. Now, placing the worker out and immediately getting to do what it says, I like that. Placing it to the right or lower than where you've placed upon is a really interesting decision. I want to do the dominant and evolution actions. They're the best. They're also at the bottom. I could take it as action 1, but then action 2 is pulling it off because then I want to go to the top of the board again. That's interesting, and it offers for some really cool decisions. It's just that those cool decisions are going to be punctuated by moments of, boom, you just lost a bunch of people here. Boom, this happened. Hey, you get another trait. And now the game is on its head. I think the domination here is a little easier to grasp maybe than the original game, but it still is kind of a funky topic. Like, I'm going to use domination. What does that mean? Well, you do some math. You multiply these tokens by the ones out here. Does it beat this number? If it does, you take that, and then that's going to add to your points at the end. Once you grok that concept, I think the game isn't bad at all. But until you do, that's not a thing that's in many other games. So you're keeping track of points. Placing tiles next to other tiles can give you a lot of bonus points. Area control on the board and playing the right card at the right moment can also give you points. And then dominating species is a main way to get points. There's a lot going on in this, and I think it's a very meaty, fulfilling game. I had a lot of fun doing it. Thematic-wise, it works really well. I'm never bored. I'm always watching what everyone else is doing on their turn, because whatever you do in your turn could very likely affect me. I have to temper my expectations. There can be wild swings in this game. It can feel crazy and out of control at certain points. I mean, there's no real randomness other than those tiles and cards that come out. But that can feel pretty striking depending on what happens to you. And you also better be in a good relationship with other players because they are going to annoy you. But if you like worker placement games, and that's what this one is, with a twist, which is where you can place it, but the white tokens, which are great. I mean, get one of those. Get 2. Try 3. Well, 2 is pretty good. And there's just, it's fascinating. The cards will come out, and after a while, if you play often, you'll see the same cards, and you'll know which ones come out and how they affect the game and what's going to happen. This is a delicious meal of a game, but it is a big one. It is a heavy one. It is one that when I'm done playing and I go, whew, let's cool off with a lighter game, and we'll play this again some other time. But I do remember the stories that this game gives you. You remember the plays that happen over the course of the game. There's certainly math in the game, but that math works hand in hand with the theming and the evolving and stuff. Yes, it's long. Yes, there's a lot of rules involved, but I think it's a lot of fun. So that's Dominant Species Marine. I'm Tom Vasel. We'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment approved.